Episode 88 of Dynasty Decisions. You guys know what we're doing around here. We're taking your Dynasty questions, your teams, your trades, your rebuilding and contending stuff. We are breaking down your teams and what you guys should be doing, all the Dynasty decisions that you might have in front of you. So if you guys enjoy at any point, you know what to do. Leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Danny, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. But yeah, to waste no time, we're going to roll up our sleeves. But before we do that and get into the first team, we got to hit the intro.
All right. Alex Peck is the first team on the docket. Of course, if you want to skip the line, our site is how you can do so. Flockfantasy.com/FSE will get you first priority to these Dynasty Decisions videos to have your own teams broken down. 12-team, half PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown, 0.5 tight end premium, super flex format here. For Alex, he has Trevor Lawrence, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Russell Wilson as his top 4 quarterbacks, pretty loaded at that position. Jahmyr Gibbs, Rachaad White, DeAndre Swift and company there, pretty decent, like hero-ish light at running back there. And then CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans as his top wide receivers, with Dallas Goedert, Evan Ingram, and Greg Dulcich at tight end. So it looks like he's already at his rookie draft. I mean, Gibbs is on his team and that kind of thing. He has an extra first rounder in next year's class as well. And then he's also got a bunch of trades listed for us here. Does not have his second in 2025. So what are your thoughts on the team? You think this is, I mean, my first impression is that this is kind of like a house money team. Maybe if things break right for you, if Gibbs is off to a great start, Rachaad White, DeAndre Swift can contribute a little bit. Maybe you're in a competitive window, but given that you have 2 rookie quarterbacks and, a light running back core, I'm kind of gearing towards a house money, especially knowing that you have an extra 1 next year too.
Yeah, definitely gearing towards house money. Not to mention, given the league market, I kind of figured with this league, given some of the trades you were able to do. Yeah, it has to be a house money because I mean, looking at some of these trades, you were able to get T-Law and Swift in exchange for Diggs and Pierce. You're able to get Jahmyr Gibbs plus for Josh Jacobs, and you're able to get Chris Godwin for the 305 and the 2025 second. I just feel like if you push your chips in too early, you may be losing out on a good amount of value that you can get from some of the veterans. Again, you already have 2 elite picks in the bank in those 2024 picks, 1 early and 1 mid. And you have the nucleus of a team that can absolutely dominate in the long term. So to answer your quick question, obviously we'll spend some more time, but to answer it quickly, like take this by ear. Obviously, if things are breaking completely right at that point, maybe you want to contend, sure, but just keep getting value because it seems like there's a lot of value to be had with some of these deals.
Yeah, and that's the key point for sure. When you're in a league where value is able to be had, it makes sense for you to not rush things and let your team kind of develop over the long term. And once we get in season, I mean, he has listed here that if he's not competitive, he'll trade Chris Godwin because he got him for like a second in the 305, which unreal trade target right now for those of you guys that are looking for wide receiver depth for a competitive team is Chris Godwin. He's such an easy projection for a lot of targets, even if it's a bad offense, even if Baker Mayfield's starting. Chris Godwin, A, will probably only be dealing with that situation for 1 year, and B, will still probably be moderately productive in the year that he's dealing with that situation. So I love that move for Godwin. I think you should be able to get relatively close to a first, assuming he's getting the targets I think he'll get. So yeah, I think the moral of the story, the moral of this team is that you're just going to play it by ear. How, if we get into the season and DeAndre Swift is like performing as good or better than Miles Sanders was last year, Rachaad White's getting volume, Jahmyr Gibbs is catching a lot of passes and that kind of thing, maybe one of your rookies is performing well at quarterback and getting off to a hot start, then at that point, maybe you can make a move. Maybe you can shift away from like Russell Wilson or something, who's like an older quarterback for your team, and go after another running back or something like that. I think if I were to make any moves with this team, I would gauge the market on Russell Wilson, just because if you're a house money team, you don't want to have an older quarterback on your roster like Russell Wilson. Maybe somebody's really bought into the Sean Payton bounce back, and it's possible. We've already kind of presented the scenario that he loses even more value than he already lost from last offseason if he doesn't look good yet again. And offloading that risk for your team would make a lot of sense, especially if you can just spin him into a young running back or a young, draft capital asset or a young wide receiver or something like that.
Yeah, the way I kind of see it as well, I'm glad you mentioned that, is maybe try to see if you can consolidate CJ Stroud plus Russell Wilson into a better quarterback. What I mean by that, if you know you're going to be house money, target Kyler Murray, target Deshaun Watson, target guys like that, because I do think for the most part, CJ Stroud more of like, a back end, second, early third round startup pick. Russell Wilson, he goes anywhere between like round 6 and round 7 usually. So if you could package them together and somehow be able to get I think Kyler Murray would be your best target, given the fact that this is more of a redraft centric league. Somebody may want the points of Russell Wilson right away and may be scared of Kyler Murray potentially sitting out. And then you're looking at a future core of Trevor Lawrence, Bryce Young, and Kyler Murray with an early projected 2024 first that you could potentially use to even get even more value. Because at that point, whether you want to draft Caleb and trade one of your other quarterbacks, or whether you want to trade the asset of Caleb for a grandfather haul, this team could quite literally dominate the league as soon as next year.
Yeah, or that pick's not 101 or 102, and you just get Marvin Harrison or
Yep.
Raheem Sanders or something to add to this roster as well. So, yeah, I mean, you're in a really good spot. There's not much I would really say as far as like rushing things. And it also looks like, based on the trades that you've made, that you kind of know what you're doing. You plan to trade Godwin for more value than you got him for. Also seems like a pretty sharp move as well. So I think we could probably move on to the next team here, which is from Brian Jones, who is also a Mother Flocker member, 12-team half PPR league. 4 point per passing touchdown is a super flex format as well. Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, and Anthony Richardson at the quarterback spots. That is pretty much as good as a core you're going to get. You have Dak for the immediacy, like QB2 production. You have Anthony Richardson for the upside in the long term. Very zero RB type of build here with a lot of mid-round picks at running back. Kendre, Tank Bigsby, Chase Brown, Sean Tucker, all those guys. And then AJ Brown, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jordan Addison. All 5 of those guys are inside my top 18 wide receivers in Dynasty. So those guys are all going to be very valuable for you long term. And then Josh Downs at the 302 is an absolute fucking steal. I can't believe you got him that low. And then Dalton Kincaid at the 109 there to be your main tight end. So it looks like to me that you had a very barren roster with a bunch of young receivers, Patrick Mahomes and Dak Prescott, and you had a bunch of draft picks this year that you spent on all these guys with, Richardson and Addison and all those dudes and Kincaid. So, I mean, this is like the first year of your 1-year punt kind of starting to come to fruition a little bit. You can kind of see the fruits of your labor. You still have a number of picks next year in the mid rounds as well to additionally add, some running back talent or whatever to this team. But I would say, like, you're probably going to be in a position this year where if your young running backs are, relevant, if Bigsby, if Miller, Chase Brown, any of these guys become relevant, there's a possibility that you could actually compete with this team. Although I would say, again, another, house money type of situation. Young running back core, ambiguous running back core, a rookie tight end. Like, you probably don't want to rush this thing and like shove your chips into the middle necessarily, but a very well-constructed team. It's strong at the foundational positions is the first way to kind of tell that.
Yeah, I mean, you got hammers all over the place at quarterback and running back. Like, legitimately, if we're just talking redraft, you have a top 3 overall quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. You have a top 8 to 10 quarterback in terms of ranking with Dak Prescott. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, you don't have to rely upon, but from a points per game basis, this might be a guy who's scoring over 20 points per game in his rookie season, given the legs that he possesses. And not to mention at the wide receiver spot, you have a top 7 overall wide receiver right now in ADP with AJ Brown. Top 12 overall wide receiver, Jalen Waddle. Top 12 overall wide receiver with Chris Olave. Amon-Ra St. Brown is like consensus wide receiver 7 or 8 at this point as well, like right after A.J. Brown and CeeDee Lamb. Like, you have hammers all over the place. And in start 10, I want hammers that can win me my league. So for me personally, like you kind of said, play it as a house money early on, but worst case scenario, you get this, or not worst case scenario, but best case scenario, you get to, week 6 and you're 4-2 and your team has the second most points in the league. And you want to potentially swing that 2024 first for a hammer at running back, a legitimate RB1, maybe an aging guy. Maybe you have to trade for even Austin Eckler at that point, considering you're probably projecting your pick to be late at that point. Guy like Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, somebody like that. If you can get a legitimate difference maker at the running back 1 spot, once you deem yourself ready to compete in season again after like a 4-2 start, I'm all for it with this team. Also, I mean, it does potentially matter what exactly happens at tight end if Dalton Kincaid can get under wraps in that Bills offense quite early. But again, you still have a 2nd round pick too. So worst case, you have to buy a, plug and play type of back end tight end 1 for a 2nd round pick, an older guy. Like, let's just say hypothetically, name an old tight end you could think of.
I mean, David Njoku could be a guy that you go
Maybe,
after.
yeah.
Maybe even a younger guy that just you're betting on, like a Greg Dulcich or something like that. It's available for a 2nd rounder. Yeah, I think I wouldn't rush this team. You're definitely in a house money window. After this year is over, maybe you just spend that 1st round pick on a running back, spend another 2nd round pick on a running back. Hopefully by then, maybe Kendre Miller, Tank Bigsby, some of these guys are in more line for projectable volume in 2024, and you're able to use those guys as your running back depth. and potentially use your 2025 first in your 2024 season as leverage to upgrade at other spots as well. So for me, I wouldn't rush this thing, but like Danny said, if you're off to a great start, all your receivers are performing, all your running backs maybe overperforming expectations, same with your tight end, Dalton Kincaid there, you could definitely make some moves. As far as the trades that you made, it's pretty easy to understand why you're in the position you're in.
Yeah.
I mean, on April 4th, so before the NFL draft, you sold Kenneth Walker for Jalen Waddle. And, on the Kenneth Walker side, you also sent away a 302. I think at the time, I would have still taken Jalen Waddle, let alone now since what's transpired with Kenneth Walker's situation where he now has to compete for touches with Zach Charbonnet. So that was a great move to think ahead and get ahead of the curve there on Jalen Waddle. You also sold off Jameson Williams and the 402 for the 109. I'm lower on Jameson Williams. I would
Great
prefer
foresight still.
The 109 there. It looks like maybe you traded up from 109 and that's how you got Jordan Addison. Or no, you just took Kincaid with that pick. So definitely makes sense there. I think Kincaid versus JMO is a conversation. I actually prefer Kincaid given his market value at the position, but I think a lot of JMO truthers would still take JMO.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. They're like a wash, but if you want to get off the ambiguity, plus you needed a tight end, I don't mind the move. I think it's a fine move. And in general, I think 109 for Jameson Williams, if you could tell me I could cash out for Jameson Williams at that cost, I would. Majority of leagues, you're probably getting offers as like the 202. So the fact that you were able to get the 109, I think is a solid deal. The one I'm flabbergasted by is how did you get Amon St. Brown for the 112 and the 202? Like, what was that guy thinking? He's like, oh, is he still focused on the fact that Amon was a 4th round pick? Like, we are 2 years past that, and Amon St. Brown averaged over 10 targets per game when he was healthy last year. So the fact that you're able to spot that and get such a ridiculous price, I will say a ridiculous price on Amon St. Brown, very well done.
Yeah, and I mean, it looks like during the season, they're harder to read here, but it looks like he sold Tyreek Hill for a Olave plus a late 4th round pick, which I think is a great move. TJ Hawkinson, you sold for the 112, maybe not the greatest move in the world considering Hawkinson's ascension in value, but not bad, I would say. And then Rachaad White, it looks like you sold him for the 204 and the 311. You spent the 204 on Kendre Miller and then the 311 on Chase Brown. So, I mean, you take 2 lotto swings at a running back instead of Rachaad White. I think that was a pretty decent move. And then it looks like you sold the Isaiah Pacheco and the 201 recently for Jordan Addison, probably before your rookie draft or around your rookie draft. And I would say at the time, you were looking at a team where, because it just happened, it looks like June 9th or whatever that you did this trade. You had Isaiah Pacheco to go along with all your ambiguous running back situations. And even though you were strong at wide receiver, you were like, Pacheco might be a short shelf life guy. I'm going to move him for an asset that's a little bit more valuable. And then obviously Jordan Addison definitely would qualify as that. So he said his current plan is to try and grab more running backs in 2024 and to see how things shake out. He said they have a 6th round draft because it's IDP, and being a Vikings fan, he kind of regrets making the Hawkinson trade. I would say that was definitely the worst trade that you made, but overall, I think it was pretty solid, and your team is in a good spot because of it. So like we kind of said earlier, just go into the season, see how your team is progressing. If your running backs are all useless, like Kendrick's behind Jamal Williams and Kamara, Tank Bigsby's not getting that much work, Chase Brown's, buried on the depth chart or whatever, then you're cool to just kind of let this thing tank out and ruin your own 1st round pick, make it a top 5 or a top 6 pick. Hopefully you can get yourself a stud running back and you can make some moves beyond that point in 2024. So that's probably going to be your real competitive window, but you definitely are in a house money team this year. So AJ is the next team that we're going to talk about here. An avid submitter to Dynasty Decisions, 12-team PPR league, 6 point per passing touchdown with a half point tight end premium and a super flex. The classic 112, 201 Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray stack. I've seen AJ do this on numerous occasions. It's actually funny that AJ submitted this team because I had a consult with somebody in this league the other day, and I saw this team already that AJ drafted. So
you know what's funny about that too is while he was drafting, he asked me for some pointers too. So he's like, what do you think about, like, basically when he got offered a deal, he would ask me like, what are your thoughts on this? So a lot of these deals, I actually already know what's going to end up materializing. And I'll tell you right now, you're going to love some of the moves he was able to make.
Yeah, so I mean, Watson, Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, 801 Jordan Love. I'm not high on Love, but that's a pretty good value on him for sure. Cam Akers, Kendre Miller, Roschon, Tank Bigsby, Chase Brown, very like 0 RB, light at running back there. I think Akers at the 812 is pretty crazy as well. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnson, Chris Godwin, Rashad Bateman, Claypool, DPJ. So very young at wide receiver, some upside there. And then Sam Laporta, Cole Kmet, and others at tight end. and it looks like he has all of his future picks. This was relatively a sharper draft room because, again, I've seen the board. I know exactly how this kind of this league behaved. It was mostly people from our audience and the Flock Discord, so a lot of these guys kind of know what they're doing. But I still think you were able to do a pretty decent job on some of these trades. So at the 612, all these trades were like startup trades. So we'll take these with like a little bit of a grain of salt, but just let's analyze like the pick trade rather than like the players that ended up being there, because it looks like he went up for a player. He moved down from the 612 and he received the 702, which was like 3 picks later. He got a small pickup grade in the 9th to 8th round, and then he got a small pick upgrade from the 11th round to the 10th round, and then same thing in the 13th round as well. So overall, moving down 3 spots to get a couple pick upgrades in future rounds, pretty solid move there. And then it looks like he also traded down from 701 and 702 maybe too, to be able to secure some more picks in like kind of the money zone of the draft. 707, 801, 907. Again, kind of disregard the players that you got there, but even still, I mean, Jordan Love is definitely a guy that probably shouldn't have been going that low. So the fact that you got some quarterback equity out of that is really, really good news.
Yeah, the way I kind of look at this is, yeah, you traded down, but Terry McLaurin and Chris Godwin, same tier in Dynasty for me. So number one, that pretty much cancels out in terms of who we traded up for versus who you ended up getting by trading down 6 spots. And then when we compare Jordan Love versus Dalton Kincaid, honest to God, I think is pretty much a wash. So
I think I would prefer Love by a decent margin, to be honest, because Love's a quarterback. He's a young quarterback. He has a chance to really go up in value. And then once you get to the next part of it, Kendre versus Hendon Hooker, it's not even close. And Tank Bigsby versus Cedric Tillman's not even really close for me, too.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would rather Love at 1.5 premium, so I understand it a little bit more. But regardless, though, the fact is, even if you consider the first 2 player-for-player swaps a wash, the fact that you're able to jump 4 rounds from the 13th to the 9th and 3 rounds from the 15th to the 12th and turn Hendon Hooker and Cedric Tillman into Kendre Miller and Tank Bigsby, absolute money moves. And then the final deal is like, whatever, we're in the 20 plus rounds of startup. Who cares?
They're shitter players. But I would say overall, your team is very well constructed. You're, again, another, like, I mean, this is just a house money video. Apparently, this is a house money team right out of the startup. It's going to be difficult to sell high on some of these players, knowing the market that you're in, because it sounds like all these guys kind of know what they're doing. Hence why you weren't able to pick up any like future first, because this is probably the type of team and the type of startup strategy that I would have tried to go after future first for, but you probably weren't able to get them in this startup because people were holding on to them like grim death. So if you get into mid-season and Cam Akers having an RB2 season, obviously try and sell them, that type of thing. But other than those type of moves, I think once you spend your picks, you might be able to get yourself a stud RB1 for this roster. And it might have kind of materialized by that point where you're actually able to compete with your young running back core, with your young wide receiver core starting to develop, assuming you hit on those picks. So pretty good build overall. He also said I had a 3rd round reversal and he picked 12th. So he got the benefit of getting I think it was a Monra at 301, where he probably wouldn't have had a better player than that at 312. He would have been looking at a pretty shitty situation there. He said he wanted to go productive struggle / 1 year punt. He said he feels like every player on his team, besides some nobodies and Godwin, have a reasonable shot at being worth more next year than they are now. And then he said some riskier assets than others for sure, but still chances, whether playing through free agency, like when Cam Akers moves on or whatever, he might have a chance to go up in value, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think pretty decent assessment of your team. Pretty good job overall. Let's move on to the next team here, which is from Jay Riley. 12 team, 1 PPR, 4 point per passing touchdown, full point tight end premium. So 2 points for the tight end position, and then a super flex league as well. Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson. I feel like every team has had those 3 quarterbacks on them. And then Dalvin Cook, James Conner. So obviously some guys that are not very valuable at the running back position, but could give some production maybe. Jalen Waddle, Drake London, Christian Watson, Sky Moore, Jahan Dotson, and company there at wide receiver. And then Michael Mayer, Chiga Okonkwo, Zach Ertz, Noah Fant at tight end. He has his 2023 rookie picks listed as the 110 and then the other ones, but it doesn't look like he spent the 110. It looks like he used it in one of his trades somewhere. So we'll have to maybe keep an eye out for that. But overall, when you look at this team, what are your thoughts? To me, I think this is a team where you got to sell off those older running backs if you can get anything for them. Maybe you can't. You've already tried and you're not able to get anything. But what are your thoughts?
Well, you got the house money build with 2 running backs that don't fit the build. So I would agree, trade those 2 running backs once you get the opportunity to in season. Obviously, Dalvin Cook not signed to a team right now. James Conner always gets a stigma in the offseason because he's not like a great real life fan or a real life NFL running back. So you'd have to wait until in season, I would say, to flip those guys, but definitely flip them. Because I mean, if we're looking in those pick banks, 4 first-round picks in 2024, 3 first-round picks in 2025, with an extremely strong nucleus. Like I said, Kyler, Dak, Russell Wilson at quarterback, Waddle, London, Watson at wide receiver, also Jahan Dawson just chilling below Sky Moore there, and then Michael Mayer as your main tight end with some upside there with Chigaquonko behind him. Like, this is a very, very strong nucleus of a team with those picks on the docket. And once we get into some of these moves, it's easy to see why you're able to accumulate such value on this team, because I'm not a proponent for dealing away elite quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts, but if you were to tell me right now, I can cash in Jalen Hurts and Mike Evans and flip them for 3 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks, a third-round pick, Dak Prescott and Drake London. Like, this value alone of this package, if we're equating it, Dak Prescott, we'll say, is worth just over 2 first-round picks. Drake London, let's say it's worth a mid-first and a second. At that point, you're looking at 6+ firsts of value. And as much as I like Jalen Hurts, I would say he's about 4 firsts.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I tried to cancel this trade out, to me, Dak Prescott, a first and a second, would equal Jalen Hurts, give or take.
Give or take.
And then Drake London is obviously way more valuable than Mike Evans, so any difference there would kind of make it up. And then you just like net like 2 1s and 3 2s and a 3, or 2 2s and a 3, basically on top of that. So yeah, definitely a great move. Again, I'm not a proponent of selling Jalen Hurts either, but if you can get that kind of value, it's a great move. It looks like he just traded for James Conner because he thinks he's undervalued. And we do this on house money teams all the time, because we know, this time of year, a guy like James Conner is not worth anything in people's minds, right? They don't care about James Conner, but once he's on the field, if he's producing like an RB2, he's going to be worth a hell of a lot more than, a random second. I don't know. He didn't actually, did he specify anywhere what this second is expected to be? Because he has a bunch of stars there. He said, flipped one of their second round picks. So I guess it was the guy's second round pick that he flipped it to. He gave him his own 2 back. But yeah, I think James Conner has a chance, especially given how your league, devalues draft picks in the Jalen Hurts trade. Maybe James Conner plus like another piece in season. Maybe you can deal James Conner first and Russell Wilson, because he's an older player, for like a 1 and a 2 or something like that in season.
Yeah, that would be a very reasonable move and something that can get you moving forward. Not to mention, if you can get another first to absolutely monopolize that 2024 draft, that would be in your best interest, because we see why. We already mentioned the Hurts deal, but we see realistically why you're able to build this pick bank, because as good as you did on the Hurts deal, listen, I love Jordan Addison. I like Jameson Williams. I mean, he's riskier, he's volatile. I like him relative to where you are at on him. And 24 second, yes, early to mid. Who cares? You got 3 first-round picks out of the deal. Like, Jordan Addison just fell to the 110 in your draft. Jameson Williams probably wouldn't go in the first round in the majority of leagues if we were to redraft right now. Second round pick is not a first round pick. So therefore, you pretty much upgraded every single one of your assets according to your league market.
Yeah, he also says this guy's team sucks too, that gave him this trade. So those picks are going to end up being high, most likely. And if the 2024 first is high, chances are the 2025 first can be even higher, because if he doesn't have his first in 2024, how is he going to replenish his roster? So yeah, you definitely took that guy to the woodshed. He said he's never played Dynasty before, and all these trades that he's been able to make, and he said he couldn't refuse. Like he drafted Jalen Hurts. He's like, I didn't want to trade him away, but he couldn't refuse this trade. So it looks like a lot of the people in this league are, new to Dynasty. He said most of the league is new, and they dealt a lot of their first to try and contend this year. He said very few sharps. A lot of these guys are casuals, basically. So I think you did a great job. There's really nothing else I would change about this team. For me, my goal with this roster would be Dalvin Cook, James Conner, Dak Prescott, and Russell Wilson. I would try and transition them into younger assets, especially Prescott and Russell Wilson, because they're quarterbacks. Maybe you can take Dak Prescott in one of your firsts and go after Trevor Lawrence or go after Justin Herbert or somebody like that. Or maybe you can take Russell Wilson and take a swing on a Will Levis or something in that range. Or maybe if you're a Trey Lance guy, you can go after Trey Lance. I personally would try and move off those older assets, let this team kind of stink next year, and then be ready to go in 2024 once you spend those picks.
I will say, in terms of Dak, you might have to wait till in season to move him, because I'm assuming if you got him for such a good value right now, he's probably held at a lower standard in terms of your market value, whether it's,
if they're all contending, though, it's possible that Dak Prescott and Russell Wilson have a decent amount of value on the market.
For sure. But the reason why I'm saying that is because in this league, like what he was able to get Dak for with the picks, the thing is that in a more casual league, there might be a stigma around Dak right now. Oh, he threw 15 picks. He only played 12 games, whatever. Like, there's going to be a stigma right now because people see the interception totals right now. But if it's come week 4 in the NFL season and Dak Prescott's thrown 12 touchdowns to 2 picks, which is a very plausible scenario given what we could expect from this offense next year and how typically interception regression works for good quarterbacks. If he's off to that type of start and he's the quarterback 6 in fantasy, like you kind of said, see maybe how much it would cost to get up to Trevor Lawrence, how much it would cost to get up to a guy like Justin Herbert, a guy like that, because I think that will be your best time to move off of a quarterback like Dak Prescott in terms of his age.
Yeah, and I mean, in a casual league, maybe people are lower on Justin Fields because he didn't look like the best passer in the world or
Yep.
whatever. So, I would definitely experiment getting younger at quarterback. But other than that, there's not much I would do with this team aside from sell the running backs if you can and sell the quarterbacks if it's casual league and people want production. And James Conner was going for that cheap. The second he starts producing, he's going to go back up in value. The second Dalvin Cook signs with the Miami Dolphins, he's going to go back up in value or whatever. So definitely take advantage of those buying windows. I mean, I can't tell that this is your first dynasty league. So
Sharp.
you're obviously doing a great job, and you're going to be running roughshod for the next couple of years after you spend those 2024 picks. So we can move on to the next team here, which is from Ernest. 12 team, half PPR, 4 point per passing touchdown, super flex format. What's up?
I guess we know who the thumbnail of the video is going to be. Another Kyler Murray team.
I feel like Kyler Murray is in like literally every video of ours because we talk about him as like the easiest buy in the history of Dynasty right now. Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray, Sam Howell's the main quarterbacks. Bijan, Kenneth Walker, Isaiah Pacheco, and Zach Charbonnet there at running back. AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, DK Metcalf, Jahan Dotson, Kadarius Toney, Josh Downs, so pretty deep there as well. Then Greg Dulcich is his main tight end. It looks like he has all of his future picks as well. I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record here, but it sounds like this is another house money team because I mean, you have Kyler Murray, which is a pretty strong indicator that's a house money team. You have a rookie running back. You have a running back splitting a backfield. You have a couple young receivers that are still developing a second-year tight end. This is the type of team that I would absolutely be waiting and seeing on till midseason, because if Dulcich breaks out, he has like a top 10 season. If Kenneth Walker's still getting good volume, if Bijan is Bijan and we know exactly what he's going to do, if your young receivers, Garrett Wilson, Olave, Dotson, all these guys take a step forward, and Kyler Murray is maybe on track to play at some point, this would be the type of team that I would absolutely be looking to buy a quarterback if I can do it for a relatively inexpensive price. Maybe you just want to go after somebody that can get you by. Maybe you send your second rounder for Ryan Tannehill or Matthew Stafford or something like that. Or you could go up a little bit bigger and send your first rounder, maybe plus Sam Howell to a rebuilding team. And maybe that gets you, I don't know, somebody in the Jared Goff range or in the Kirk Cousins range.
Plus.
Yeah, potentially plus in that spot.
Yeah, I think that would be the way I would approach it as well. Maybe in that deal, you can get Kirk Cousins plus James Conner for your 2024 first straight up. And in that perspective, you're getting another insurance running back to add to your core. Obviously, like hypothetically, if Pacheco's not getting receiving work and he's like an RB3, James Conner's, a 20 touch per game type of bell cow, gives you some more strength in the start 10 because obviously your wide receivers, you don't really have to do much there. And the other thing, I mean, maybe I have full confidence that Dulcich will break out, but maybe come point in season, Kyler Murray's healthy by week 4 and you want to try to contend at that point, that might be a spot you might add an insurance piece. I mean, we mentioned moving a 2024 second for a veteran tight end in a previous team. Like maybe you can inquire about that as well.
Yeah, I think this is the type of team where, yeah, it's kind of a house money team, but you probably are one trade away from being a real contender in this league. Like if you traded your 2024 first right now and you got Kirk Cousins and David Njoku for it, you'd probably be a contender immediately and you'd be ready to go. So I would definitely maybe make a move before the season starts, because I do think you could probably contend with this team, especially, I mean, 3 wide receiver league, AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, all 3 of those guys are top 12 receivers in redraft. DK Metcalf, Jahan Dotson, Kadarius Toney, those guys are going to fill out your flex spots for the most part. But then Bijan and Walker be top 2 running backs. Isaiah Pacheco and Charbonnet can work into your flex spots as well. Deshaun Watson will be your main quarterback for the time being. Hopefully Sam Howell can get you by. If not, you go out and buy a quarterback. And then if Kyler Murray's back in week 6 or week 7 or something, then you can go out there and throw him and Watson out there pretty much each and every week, and they're going to get the job done for you. So this, he says, looking to see which direction I should be headed, I would say you're much closer to a contender than you are to even a house money team. You're you're in a good spot overall, but I think I would probably potentially make a move for another quarterback if the price is right. Hopefully there's a Sam Howell truther in your league. As much as I like Sam Howell, if you could upgrade him into a better quarterback using the fact that he's also a quarterback, because I know a lot of the time some people won't make trades away from quarterbacks unless they're getting one back. So maybe somebody's really in on Sam Howell and you could trade Sam Howell, your 2024 first and third, for Daniel Jones or something like that. It would really fortify the type of team that you're trying to build, a contender that has, a lot of longevity.
Yep. No, I would agree with you there. But overall, I think you're in a very liquid position. A lot of potential moves you can make, but you're not hard pressed either way. Like if Kyler Murray is gearing on the side of he's looking like he's going to be out, like you could take it by ear at that point, or Greg Dulcich doesn't break out, you could take it by ear. But like Corey said, like 85% of the time, you're most likely competing with this team.
Yeah, for sure. So those 5 teams that we broke down so far were all a mother flocker tier submissions. Again, if you want to get your team broken down right away, you just had your rookie draft, maybe you haven't had your rookie draft yet, and you want to have your team broken down ASAP. The way to skip the line, of course, is at flockfantasy.com. And over there, you'll also get access to our Dynasty rankings, articles. I have my top 10 running back and quarterback rankings for 2024, a full video of me breaking down tape and breaking down the strengths and weaknesses of those players. So if you guys play Dynasty, if you're 2024, draft capital lotto has like 5 first-round picks in it, and you want to know who's good next year, I would highly suggest checking out the site. And you, of course, you'll get the way to skip the line in these videos as well. But Jacob Kruger is the first free submission that we're going to get to. And again, when you submit your teams for free, if you've already previously submitted and you have not had your team covered, just indicate when you submitted, and we'll go backdate that and get you on ASAP. But Jacob Kruger's team here, 12-team PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown, super flex format. Justin Herbert, Trey Lance, and Ryan Tannehill there. Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, Cam Akers, A.J. Dillon, Zach Charbonnet at running back. T. Higgins, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, Traylon Burks, Elijah Moore, Sky Moore, Jaden Reed. And then Cole Kmet is his main tight end, has an extra 1 in 2024, an extra 2 in 2024, and then 2 extra 1s and an extra 3 in 2025. So a pretty young team, pretty strong team, I would say as well, with a lot of flexibility. So he said he feels like I'm a QB2 and an elite tight end away from really contending. So, I mean, you look at his quarterback situation. If you added a QB2 to this team, you'd have Herbert, the QB2, Trey Lance, and Ryan Tannehill. I would say you'd definitely be in a good spot there. And then if you upgraded your tight end situation as well, you'd probably be in a good spot there. For me, because your RB1 is coming off of an ACL tear, because you have Trey Lance there at quarterback, and you have the assets to go after a quarterback, I would say I'm probably more inclined to kind of wait and see with this team. That's my attitude. I don't know. Are you more inclined to go after somebody, maybe a Dak Prescott on the cheap or somebody like that? Or are you kind of maybe cautiously optimistic?
Yeah, I mean, like I would definitely, first of all, I would go after a quarterback now. I mean, if you want to wait to the start of the year, kind of see what's going on with Trey Lance, maybe he's starting at that point, like whether it's for the Niners or somewhere else, like at that point, sure. But maybe you use Trey Lance plus one of those first to go get Dak Prescott, like Corey was kind of saying. And if that's the cost, I think that would be very suitable for your team, because I do think that you can contend with this team. It's a start 8 format. So if we're looking at the starting lineup, hypothetically, let's say you have Dak Prescott in there. Justin Herbert and Dak Prescott are your 2 starting quarterbacks, with the quarterback in the super flex spot. 2 running backs, assuming Breece Hall is going to be healthy for week 1. Breece Hall and Jahmyr Gibbs, with potential for Cam Akers if Gibbs isn't projected the full workload right away. A guy like A.J. Dillon if Aaron Jones were to get hurt. A lot of insurance options behind, and a guy like Zach Charbonnet, who's just a really damn good runner and is in one of the better offenses in the league. So I think you're set at running back there. And in terms of wide receiver, that is the spot I will say, like, although I really like the core as a whole, I would maybe try to see if you can consolidate a little bit. Maybe add a first to one of these guys and go get a real hammer in your lineup. Like we're talking maybe Brandon Ayuk plus a first can get you up to, would that get you? I was gonna say Jalen Waddle and Monter St. Brown, like someone like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I think given the league format, I would be considering consolidating this team a little bit as well. He said like he's maybe inclined to trade away one of his 2025 first for Travis Kelce and a QB2. I mean, if you can get both of those for that price, then yeah, I would say that's a pretty good option. It's really all going to depend on your league, right? If your league is very highly valuing draft picks, then you're probably going to be able to go shopping no problem with your draft picks and fill out your roster. But if you're in a league where, people are valuing contending pieces and that kind of stuff, then it's probably in your best interest to wait and see with this team, see what Trey Lance becomes or whatever. I'm of the belief that I am not in on Trey Lance, and me and Danny have had a number of discussions on this. But if you could offload Trey Lance to get a better quarterback or to get a more secure quarterback, that's something that I would be willing to do. Maybe Trey Lance in a first gets you Kyler Murray, or maybe it gets you Deshaun Watson, or hell, maybe even it gets you up to Justin Fields or something like that if you have a Trey Lance truther in your league. So for me, that's probably the first move that I would make, because I think this team is closer to a house money team because Brees is coming off the ACL tear. You're light at quarterback, you're light at tight end. I would probably be more likely to build this thing out for the long term, unless the price was right, like I said.
Though I will say, I mean, we could do a whole separate video on in terms of starting a lineup and what we would kind of do in different circumstances. But if this was like a start 10 or start 11, I would typically agree that the long haul would probably be the game, because I don't think your top era, not your top end, but I don't think your depth realistically is like up there if it was a start 11. But in a start 8, if I'm only relying upon hammers and assuming it's a start 8, that's probably going to be a shallow bench as well. At that point, I don't mind just trying to consolidate and win the championship, because in a start 8, studs win the league, like plain and simple. And if we're talking about difference making type of players, you have a difference making quarterback already. You have 2 difference making running backs in your lineup. You have, while I think T. Higgins and Chris Olave aren't like CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, like they're still legitimate top 10, top 12 level wide receivers. So I do think like the top end talent of this team, while the depth isn't crazy, is definitely there. So I would say, just me personally, if you do view a potential opportunity to contend, again, it all depends, like Corey said, on your league market. If it's a redraft centric league market, obviously geared towards the house money. But if it's a typical FSC league type of market where you can kind of get some value on some veteran guys, consolidate a little bit easier, that's how I would approach it, because it's a start 8.
Yeah, and he has some trades here that should give us some kind of insight on the league market a little bit. So the first trade that he made, all 3 of these trades occurred like within a week in February by the looks of it. He traded away Chris Olave, or sorry, did he get this? He must have flip-flopped this. So he must have gotten this Chris Olave, Trey Lance 108 and 2024 second side. He traded away Jalen Waddle in the 106. Basically got in my opinion, I think Olave is worth more in Dynasty than Jalen Waddle. So I would actually prefer Chris Olave. He gets he downgrades his 106 to 108, gets an upside swing at Trey Lance and a 2024 second. I think that was a solid move. He did actually send away Kyler Murray by the looks of it. He sold Kyler Murray, DJ Moore, the 112, 201, and a 2024 second. But I think you got a pretty good return for him with Brees Hall, the 104, and a projected early to mid first. So for me, if I'm balancing out this trade, I think Brees Hall and Gibbs is worth about Kyler, the 112 and 201, give or take. And then DJ Moore in the second, to me, is not worth it nearly as much as the 2024 first early to mid. So pretty solid move there. And then he also bought Justin Herbert, AJ Dillon, and a third for Bijan Robinson, presumably at 101, 108, 2024 first, which is his own, Jimmy Garoppolo, and a second. So he thinks he overpaid for Justin Herbert. So we'll talk about that trade here in a second. What do you think of that trade? Do you think the difference between Bijan, who's like maybe only 5 or 6 picks after Justin Herbert in a startup, is that much?
I would say from a startup value perspective, probably a little bit steep. But I will say I don't mind just going out and getting the elite quarterback in this position you have with Brees Hall and Gibbs. Not to mention, I mean, like, if I were to balance out the first 2 trades and you were to tell me, yeah, you probably lost the Bijan trade a little bit on face value, but at the same time, I think you got a very, very nice value for the following trade. I think I like it as a net positive personally, because again, like we said, Justin Herbert, top 5 overall level startup pick, Bijan Robinson probably at the 111, 110 in most leagues. So you are theoretically jumping up 5 or 6 spots there, like Corey said, giving up the 108, which is like Quentin Johnson, I'm assuming, Jordan Addison, depending on the league you're in. And then the first round pick would be kind of the tipping point. Like if that's a late first, which your team could definitely be if you're competing. And that's actually another dynamic, by the way, because you gave up your own 2024 first, maybe you're more inclined to want to compete with this team to make it from a value standpoint.
Well, yeah, and that's probably why he asked the question, if I can trade my own 2025 first for Kelsey and a QB2 or whatever, then he would still have 2 firsts that aren't his, and he can compete
buying power
with this team, and you'd have buying power with those picks. And also, if you win the championship, you might still end up with like mid picks or whatever, like he has there. So yeah, I mean, knowing that you don't have your 2024 first also would play into the fact that I think maybe making a trade would be smart if the value's there. So yeah, I mean, you have a lot of options with this situation, which is always the place we want to be in Dynasty. So I would say, yeah, if you can get a quarterback too, if you can get a Kirk Cousins, if you can get a tight end upgrade like George Kittle or something like that on the cheap, on a decent price. Maybe somebody has both of those players and all they want is your 2025 first and second or something like that, then I think that's probably a pretty decent trade. So we can move on to the second last team of the video, which is from Andrew F here, another free submission. Again, if you guys submitted a free team and we never got to it, just resubmit and send us proof of when you submitted it the first time, and we'll go back and backtrack that for you. Andrew sent in his team, 12 team at PPR, 6 point per passing touchdown, half tight end premium, super flex. Guess what? Another team with Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott and CJ Stroud on it here. Devon Achane, Kendre Miller, James Cook, Zach Evans, pretty zero RB type of core there. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Quentin Johnson, Brandon Ayuk, Jahan Dotson, Kadarius Toney, etc. at wide receiver. And then Kyle Pitts and Michael Mayer as the main tight ends with a couple extra ones in 2023, including an early one, 2024. And then an extra one in 2025, and then some extra mid-round picks as well. So very young team. Already has the stable quarterback core with Kyler Murray, with Dak Prescott, with CJ Stroud, with all the wide receivers that he has, St. Brown, QJ, and all those guys. And then some pretty good upside at running back. I mean, none of those guys are like stable RB1 types, but they're going to be good depth once you actually fill out your running back core. And of course, your tight end position's in great spot too. So very well designed team. I would say this is the type of team that is like a wait and see approach for me. Like, again, another similar theme of this video has been a lot of house money teams. I would say come mid-season or come early in the season, if Achane, Miller, James Cook, one of these guys has kind of like broken out and they're giving you good production, maybe you use one of those late firsts that you have to go out and buy Josh Jacobs, or you go out and buy, Dameon Pierce or Ramondre Stevenson or somebody like that. And I think you could be probably competitive with this team year one. But given that you have Kyler Murray, given that you have a rookie quarterback as your QB3, I would probably be patient with this. I don't think it makes sense to totally go all in and sell all your picks or whatever the case is. But I do think this team could be competitive if some things kind of go your way.
Yep. No, I agree. I mean, I think you did a very good job building out the shell of this team. Like Corey kind of said, some things that can break right to help you contend, but you're going into this with a full house money type of mentality. I mean, the picks alone speak for that in volumes. 3 first-round picks, including one that's projected early alone. Like, yeah, like if it comes to a point in the season, like Corey said, I love throwing around the term if you're 5 or if you're 4-2, if you're 5-2, but that just seems like the natural record I think of. That point, like maybe you see what the buying power of those firsts will be, but if that early first is projected 1 to 3, it would take realistically at least a round 2 startup asset for me to want to move it, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe the person who drafted Bijan Robinson in this league was not ready to contend and they want quarterback equity. Maybe you could go after him. But yeah, outside of that, I would probably just use the late ones and the one in 2025 as well to potentially go after some buying power assets. But I mean, you're in a good spot. I mean, it's probably because of trades like this. You traded away T. Higgins and Calvin Ridley for a 2024 first, 2025 first, a 2024 second, Kadarius Toney. Actually, I mean, that's probably about a fair value trade, give or take. I think Higgins is worth about a first and a second, and then Calvin Ridley and Kadarius Toney. Again, I would probably take the first and the Toney side of that. But overall, I think that was, good value accumulation type of trade. In that situation, knowing that, maybe you weren't going to compete this year. T. Higgins coming at the end of his Bengals contract, maybe he loses some value. And then Calvin Ridley, a little bit older of a wide receiver as well. Maybe he loses some value, but he said it's an ongoing rebuild. He said he's tried to trade like Cook, Waller, Chark, guys like that, but nobody's kind of biting as of now. I would say, I mean, they're probably going to need to see Darren Waller stay healthy and produce before people are willing to buy in on him. So I'd probably just hold him. And same goes for James Cook. He's a small running back. People are going to need to actually see him do something before they're ready to buy in. But I mean, mid-season, if you get to a point where you are definitely not competing and you want to sell off Devon Achane for a future high pick, or sell off Kendre Miller, sell off James Cook, you could definitely take advantage of some selling windows with those guys in the season as well. So, I mean, there's not much else I would do with this team outside of just kind of wait and see what happens this year and go out and spend your picks in 2024 and then be ready to roll come the 2024 season. So I think we can move on to the next team, which is from Thomas. A 14 team, last team in the video, by the way, 1 PPR. It is a non-super flex league, so it's a 1 quarterback league, but this team's in pretty rough shape. Ryan Tannehill is the main quarterback, which is never a good sign. Even though in a 1 quarterback league, you don't need a ton, but you definitely want more than Ryan Tannehill. Nothing going on at running back. DJ Moore, Devontae Smith, Drake London, Traylon Burks, George Pickens, Jameson Williams, a solid young wide receiver core, Dallas Goedert, and Chig Okonkwo at tight end. Does have his rookie draft coming up, has not had it yet by the looks of it. 101, 102, 109, 113, and 201 to spend. I'm assuming, you add Bijan and Gibbs to this team at 101, 1-2. But here's the thing. This team with Bijan and Gibbs is still not ready to compete. So what I would probably be looking to do is potentially sell. I think I would probably be okay taking Bijan, knowing it's a 14-team, one quarterback. I mean, Bijan's going to be a really high value asset. You would need an absolute boatload of assets to move off of him. And I personally just don't think you're going to get it. And especially knowing that those first you're getting are 14-team first, one quarterback first. I think I'd personally be okay, maybe even drafting both of those guys if the value isn't there.
Yeah, it all depends on the value. That's why I kind of made that face. Like if somebody's willing to overpay, like in a 14 teamer, and they're going to be like, "Hey, listen," you could already tell that they're a middling type of team that maybe is pushing it in a little bit too early, and they're offering you like 4 1s of value. That's probably about what I would need for Bijan in a 14 teamer, given just needing that elite type of asset. So for me personally, that's how I would view it. And not to mention, I mean, like there's the possibility the pick is 114, and at that point it's basically a fucking second. So you got to protect your ass to a certain degree in that type of format. I will say though, like if you do go to the route of saying, hey, listen, like I add one or two, maybe a third running back at that 113 to this team. You already have the wide receivers. You need a quarterback, I would say. Maybe try to see if the 109 plus can get you Justin Fields, can get you someone like that. I would also say, like, worst comes to worst, you have to take Anthony Richardson at the 109. I don't think that's bad, but definitely see what your opportunity bundles could be, because maybe you package a little piece, maybe a second or a late projected first, or even that 113/201, and you could package it to the 109 to get Justin Fields in this format, because you'd have an advantage at quarterback, because then you would have some more numbers at the running back position, and because you'd have solid depth at wide receiver. I definitely think you can contend at that point, but there are definitely some moves that need to be made before I can call you contender.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting one, because I do think he has his like
Yep.
rookie draft kind of planned out here. He said at 101, 102, I'm going to go, Robinson and Gibbs, which makes sense. He's like, if Anthony Richardson's there at 109, is that a no-brainer? I think it definitely would make some sense. Although
Yep.
I would, like Danny said, maybe trade for an established quarterback instead of taking the risk on Anthony Richardson. And then he also says 113, 201, maybe I'll load up on Kendre Miller, Zach Charbonnet, Devon A-Chain, Roshan Johnson, whoever ends up being at that spot. He said he thinks there's a lot of directions he can go in. Even if he misses on Richardson at quarterback and takes a running back there or something, he could probably get Bryce Young or CJ Stroud at 201 or 113 as well. So he basically just said, what do we think? He also has 2 first next year. And at that point, he should have some strong depth. So I would say, I mean, if you hit on your picks, you could actually be in a house money season as early as this year. But I would say you do have some players on your team that I view as sell candidates, with Treylon Burks, George Pickens, and Jameson Williams. So for me, I would potentially be looking to move off of those guys as well. Maybe you can send DJ Moore plus George Pickens and get a better receiver, or DJ Moore plus Jameson Williams gets you a better receiver, or something like that. But those are kind of like minor things that I'd be looking at. So I would say, I mean, initially this team looked like a complete train wreck, but you are in a decent spot, being that you haven't had your rookie draft yet. He also has some trades that he made last season he just wants to document. I don't know how the fuck he made some of these trades. Antonio Gibson, Nico Collins, and Khalil Herbert, he sold off for the 102 and a
We can move
2024
on from
first.
these trades.
Sold off Elijah Mitchell and Jalen Warren for what became the 109 as well. I mean, in your situation, I might even be looking to strip more production from this team, knowing that that's the value of picks. If DJ Moore can net you multiple firsts based on the evaluations of some of these players, I'd absolutely have no problem trading him as well. But yeah, I mean, there's not much else I would add to this. This team's in okay shape given the picks, but you still have some work to do.
Yeah, 100%. There's still some work to do. And like Corey kind of said, not gonna lie, when I first saw it, I didn't see that you didn't have the 2023 draft. I'm like, oh boy, we're gonna have to cover a pretty solid retool. But thankfully for you, you got those picks this year, and they're extremely valuable to your position of potentially, like Corey said, being a house money. Maybe even if the chips break right, a contending team if you address the needs that you have on this roster. So that being said, just kind of stay fluid, kind of stay water. Obviously, the 101, 102, probably pigeonholing at this point, honestly, for the 2 running backs, and then seeing kind of what 109, 113, and 201 can net you from an opportunity bundle standpoint.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if the 113 and 201, somebody's willing to sell you their first next year for those picks, don't be married to those players. Like if you have A-Chain on the board at 113 and you're like, I need A-Chain on my team because I need running backs, and somebody's offering you their 2024 first, I mean, at the very least, it's going to be about that pick next year in a probably better class. You're better off punting that production into 2024 if you can do it. So that is the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Like I said throughout the video, if you want access to these Dynasty Decisions videos, first priority goes to our site members. So flockfantasy.com, link down below in the description for promo code FSE, 30% off, 2-day free trial, 6 months for free when you sign up annually, a free Zoom consultation as well with one of us. If you sign up annually after you sign up, just reach out to us and we'll get that booked for you. But with that being said, peace out and we'll talk to you soon.